Hey, if you thought that was hilarious, you must have been around because this is the 100th episode of the Layman's Term podcast, and that's how we used to start it out, kids.
Yeah, way back in the day. Go back to like episode 1, 2, 3.
Actually, don't go back to episode 1, 2, 3. Stay right here and don't go back in time at all. Only go forward, onward, and upward here on the Layman's Term show. Every episode is quite possibly slightly better than the one preceding it.
Every now and then we get a really good one. Well, then the following one isn't quite as good.
Yeah, that happens in life. But we're talking about parables, which parables are like life. Jesus' parables illustrate supreme value of God's kingdom, worth more than all our earthly possessions. The merchant's willingness to sell everything for one pearl seems foolish by worldly standards, yet it mirrors the foolishness of the cross. 1 Corinthians 1:18. Consider what you value most in life. Are there things you're holding on to that might be hindering your full commitment to God's kingdom? Well, as we discuss and pray for the wisdom to discern what truly matters in light of eternity, we ask God to give you the courage to sell everything, to surrender fully to His will, knowing that life in His kingdom is worth any sacrifice. That's the topic for today's
That's a big
podcast.
topic.
The pearl of great price.
The
This
girl
one-
and the parable of the mustard seed in the
Ooh,
yeast.
the mustard seed.
So let me read them
which
real
one do you
fast.
want to do first?
Well, I'll do the mustard seed and the yeast. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that birds come and perch on its branches. He told them still another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into 60 pounds of flour until it worked all through the dough. And then we'll go to the parable of the hidden treasure and the pearl. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all that he had and bought that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away, sold everything he had, and bought it. So, Mitch,
Keith.
the mustard seed parable. We'll talk about that first.
All
All right. When a little tiny seed grows into this relatively big plant, but it's like a weed, right? Like it's a relatively
I don't
invasive
have much
species.
mustard experience.
Yeah. So it's like this weedy. It makes sense, right? Because the seed's so small. So if you get one that pops up,
But it's like a
and then it germinates all the seeds out, and then it's quick to germinate that seed. Like
Okay.
it's not like a year later or whatever where you can go
it's like
through.
a coriander seed, right? Kind of like
I don't know about coriander. Anyway, so Jesus is comparing the kingdom of heaven.
you ever plant beets?
Is like beets.
Beet seeds, man.
About it
Mustard
being,
ain't got nothing on a beet seed.
I'll have to take your word for it. So I got a question for you, right? What is that one thing that you can remember in your life, plant wise or other, that you just tried and tried and tried to get rid of, and you couldn't? No matter what you did, you couldn't get rid of this thing.
You know, there's those weird trees. It's like a tree. I don't think it's a tree. It grows up in bushes and stuff.
Yes,
That thing.
I have
And
one.
you lop them off, and then they grow up with 2 more shoots the next time. And then, like, you dig down and you hatchet that thing to smithereens, like 3 inches below the earth, and then they come up in like 8 different places.
Yep.
Yeah. Asparagus is pretty crazy. I love asparagus, but it's a wild plant. Like, its little shoots pull up and you rip them off. Like, that's what you do is you
Yeah.
just break the top off and eat them. Like,
Yeah.
and then it just throws up more shoots
Just more and more.
until finally you give up on eating all of it. And then the little broken off stems keep going, and it's a bush and it drops little seeds. And anyway, so that one amazes me.
Yeah, that little
how
tree and bushes. I've got one now. It kills me. I got a rose bush I can't kill. It's the thing is, the people that had the house before us planted this thing right next to the stairs up. So as it gets bigger, the little thorns grab your
ya.
pants. The stupidest placement of a rose bush I've ever seen in my entire life, and I cannot kill it.
Wow.
Dug it up, ripped it out, grows back next time with a vengeance.
As Axel says, every rose
has a thorn.
Mm-hmm.
My neighbor once saw me doing it. She's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? It's a beautiful rose bush." No, it's not.
It's weed.
It's a weed. I'm like, "You want it? Come, just take a little leaf from it. I bet you'll grow in your yard." Anyway,
I think maple trees are like that. You can get a maple tree that the top just blows out of it. You're like, just leave it.
yeah. We have a maple tree that
It'll just throw off a bunch of shoots that'll turn into branches.
Yeah. We're waiting for one of those shoots to be the tallest and straightest, and we'll lop off the rest of them and let that thing be the tree.
Every year for years, for the rest of your life, you'll lop off the rest of the little suckers that come up out of the. Oh yeah, we'll just keep lopping those off.
Yeah. Or we'll make it a maple bush.
Yeah. Syrup shrub. Oh, that's my syrup shrub there.
That's my syrup shrub. So
different maples. I know that. That was a syrup joke.
How do you relate? How do you equate or relate this idea of this invasive bush tree species of mustard to God's kingdom?
I think it's an interesting way to view it, but I like having that perspective that kind of truth and salvation, and it's an infectious thought that it really talks about the infectious nature of hope. You can't stamp out hope. And when you have the hope and the faith in the resurrection, that is a hope that can't be stamped out. And that's, I think that's what's represented with the mustard seed parable.
Yeah, I think about all the stories of people in their life that have searched for something, right? Or, maybe even were anti-religion, atheists, right? Like going out to prove that God doesn't exist, right? And then in doing so, become Christians, because it's just one of those things that you can I actually sometimes find, and this is a hot take of mine that you may or may not relate to, but I actually find sometimes, generally speaking, people that are atheists, or at least very agnostic, right? Like very, are almost more vocal about their atheism than most Christians are about their Christianity, right? And we all know the in today's terms, a meme of the devout Christian that's just always talking about God and you're going to hell and blah blah blah, and people are like, oh, they're probably just not sure of themselves in their own faith, right? That's why they do that's why they've got to profess all the time that they're Christian.
Oh, okay.
Right? Okay. I feel the same way about atheists. Like everything has to be about them being. It's like vegans.
If you're a vegan out there, don't be offended by what Keith's about to say. That's just a little disclaimer. It's fine. If you don't want to eat meat, that's great.
No, I went on a meatless diet, right? And I lost a bunch of weight and my cholesterol went down and everything's great. And so I'm still following some of that today. Okay. Don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
What I have a problem with is people that are to one extreme or the other and need to talk about it all the time.
All the time.
I'm also against people that I've known a couple guys that they called themselves meatitarians. They only ate meat and bread, right? So you get a sandwich, they take everything off of it, meat and bread, okay? Very unhealthy lifestyles. very unhealthy lifestyles. But people that are so like into whatever it is, you're into motorcycles. You're gonna talk about motorcycles all the time. It annoys people, right? So back to my original hot take. I've never met an atheist that didn't tell you all the time that they're an atheist and God is dumb, or whatever, right?
Mm.
And I think that that's because of, in a way, it's because they're searching for something, and something is like pecking at them.
And they're trying to stamp it out.
And
They're trying to pull up all the little mustard seed shoots.
Yep.
Fascinating hot take.
It's my hot take.
For all of our atheist listeners, call in and we can discuss this live.
I would venture to guess we have 0 atheist listeners. Although the gardening tips alone could be worth it.
That's true. Do you want a joke? Is this a good time in the podcast for a joke?
I love a joke.
All right. If you believe, Keith, 12.5% of the Bible, that makes you an atheist.
If you believe 12.5% of the Bible,
it makes you an eighth.
Theist.
Theist. See it?
Theist.
Get it?
Eighth theist. That's funny.
That's good.
That's pretty good.
I mean, that was worth listening. That was worth the first kids joke. 10 minutes into the podcast, you're gonna want to hear it.
That's pretty good.
That's gonna be the hot take.
That's like a Grammy joke right there.
Grammy.
So really this kind of thought of, God's kingdom in the first parable that we read, and maybe a little bit of the second, if you include the yeast, the thought of the yeast in all this flour, right? This little tiny bit mixed in with all this flour and how it rises and grows and can feed everybody. I remember in a sermon once hearing something that makes me connect well with it, but like the thought that God's kingdom is really unstoppable and really uncontainable, right? Like you can do all this work to try to stop it, but in the end, it's God. Like you're paddling up a river without a paddle, right? And I think it was Spencer, one of our old pastors, who talked about God's will in a certain way, but I think that it relates now, which is like, the Mississippi River, right? The Mississippi River dumps into the Mississippi. If you trace it all the way up, it starts as this little creek, little stream of water, right? It's and then it grows bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes throughout, and how sometimes as humans we can be like little kids, right? Playing in this creek, in this little stream, bringing out rocks, damming it up, right? Trying to divert the water any which way we want to go, but at the end of the day, it still becomes the Mississippi, right? And I really think about that in this context too. You can try and do things. You can do things that are against God's will and intentions, and try to, stop or control it. But at the end of the day, it's still much bigger than that. What do you think about
that? I agree. It's the push and pull is stronger than my obstinate, defiant resistance.
Yeah.
But the one parable here that I think is a little different than the others. Well, there's two of them. So the finding the treasure in the field and then buying it.
Yeah.
That one seems shady to me.
It does, doesn't it?
Like
right?
I haven't
not just finding it, but then burying it, hiding it again.
Yeah.
Then buying the field and then coming back for the treasure.
It's like, well, if you found it and you dug it up, and well, just why didn't if you're going to be nefarious, just take it with
Just
you,
keep it. Yeah.
or yeah. So I don't know. That one's hard. That one's hard.
It's very hard for me too.
And I think maybe it's like some of my baseball analogies. They just don't work all the way through.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe we're just in a string of parables. He's like, maybe the whole field thing.
All right, let me give you the second take about a pearl, right? Like,
Yeah.
like he said it, and it was like, ooh, yeah.
All right. Hold on. How
Backtrack.
about this pearl? And then that's the second one that is hard for me. It just seems, it seems reckless, right?
Oh, okay.
Whereas
Hit me with that. Why is it reckless?
well, hold on. Whereas the field one seems like
Self-serving.
devious,
Okay.
sneaky, right? Like, but the pearl one, because it's like, worldly speaking, earthly speaking, where these parables are trying to make sense, is trying to use worldly views and worldly concepts to construct eternal God-related concepts. Worldly speaking, something is worth exactly what, Keith?
What somebody's willing to pay for it.
Somebody's willing to pay for it, right?
Yep.
So a screaming deal on something is procuring it
At a lower price.
at a lower rate than what the maximum of which someone's willing to
Correct.
pay for it. So I think the pearl of great price for me shows that I guess the takeaway is the recklessness of it, because we're called to seek out and abandon everything for living the way Christ calls us to live, regardless of what is valued, what value that gets assigned to in the world. So that it's just a harder one to navigate because it's not this one for one. It's more of a. That's what makes it confusing.
Yeah, it's definitely
it lines up.
The two of them are odd.
It
Together,
lines up with the rich young ruler of, oh, okay, you've followed all the rules. Great. Now go sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and follow me.
Right.
That's what it lines up with to me. It's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Couldn't the rich young ruler been just as faithful and not done those things? Well, no, because the faithfulness, Christ himself called him out to do more. And that's where this pearl comes in, because the math doesn't math.
Yeah, I think about a servant can't serve two masters. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're trying like the selling of everything, I mean, what would your wife say if she came home, decided to go to lunch, comes home, and you got a for sale sign in the yard, says pending on it, you've already sold it, that all the stuff inside's gone, and you're like, hey, I found this pearl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wait for it.
And then if she's like, okay.
It's a small grain of sand.
Okay.
It was irritating
like
a clam for
then,
many moons.
Then what if she was like, okay, like there's, okay. So how much money did you sell to buy this thing? And you're like, $1 million. Okay. How much is this pearl worth? $100,000. Or like whatever, right? Like where it doesn't make sense. Like you're not like, oh, $5 million. Oh, we just made $4 million. You're like, where it just doesn't make sense.
No, so
right?
it's more of a no. This is a pearl
that I'm keeping,
that I had in childhood,
right?
That has sentimental value,
yes.
That doesn't have a price tag.
Yes, you bought the Beanie Baby. I have a Beanie Baby from
So the pearl
it's
of
cool.
great price being the something that's not.
Not worth anything, not worth monetarily what you're buying it for, but it's worth something to you, right? And I think about that, and I think that one, my wife would think I was crazy, but this to you, it's reckless, but it goes against what human nature is, which is self-serving, wanting resources to not be scarce, right?
Yeah, but what if you? I'm just going
Spitballing here.
going way out on a mustard seed tree limb here. If you flip it too, and you think, I think maybe hard part of struggling with it is the inanimacy of just the pearl. Like it's a thing. Like it's a thing,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a why are we assigning this this great value to this pearl? But yet, if you changed it to your child,
Sure.
well, no brainer,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I also sometimes in those instances think about, you having to keep your house in order first before you can, help others, right? Like there's a point in which your own personal sacrifice, where you're really harming yourself and limiting your ability to help others, right, in a way. And so this parable seems to kind of go even beyond that, right? Where it's like, um, for me to be able to properly serve the needy, I have to serve myself a little bit. I have to have some resources to do that, right? Per se, right? Like if all Christians out there quit their jobs and sold other belongings and gave it to the poor, well, then we would just be poor with them, right? Like you would then not have any more resources. So you have to be able to like take care of yourself and your family first before you then take care of other people. But in this instant, which is kind of in this parable, it's like telling you no.
It's like Schmeagol and Gollum and the precious.
The ring,
Yeah.
the ring of power. Yeah, I struggled. I didn't struggle with with the with the treasure, that they found in the land, because that's a very human thing to do, I think. Right? Although we don't know what the treasure is. Right? Like they find a treasure, they bury it, right? It still could be the Beanie Baby from high school, right? Like it could still have been not worth what the person paid for the land that the treasure was on. It's just a treasure, right? Like I'd be interested in the translation of treasure, from Greek to English. I wonder if there's something there. I don't know. We'd have to ask somebody smarter than a couple laymen. But going back about like talking about like abundance and scarcity, you could kind of compare the parable of the yeast and the bread a little bit to abundance. Because I mean, 60 pounds of flour. Can you imagine like how big this dough is going to be? Like,
Well,
I make huge.
I make pizza dough with 1 packet of yeast, and it ends up with 5 cups of flour, which maybe that's a couple pounds.
Yeah, a couple
But
pounds.
when you need that, like for 15 minutes or whatever, it's a workout.
It's a workout.
I could not imagine,
60 pounds.
yeah,
30 times what you normally do
like, no, you couldn't
by yourself.
I don't even know, like, what do you, like, do some
Tag demon.
top rope elbow drop onto that thing, like, I don't know what you would,
Yeah.
it would so quickly get out of hand that, and it says, yeah, and I don't know the ancient bread making techniques, but maybe they're working the dry yeast into the dry flour and none of it's activated until they get
it's wet.
until they get it. Yeah, wet. Well, then they're only getting wet the portion that they're gonna work. I don't
Yeah,
know,
I don't know.
but like I could definitely see this getting out of hand really quickly.
I
If you
could-
had,
Yeah. Could you imagine 60 pounds of flour on your counter rising?
yeah, like it would be like a movie, like The Blob, right? Like it's gonna start swelling
Yeah.
out the doors and
Yeah. Second hot take of the day.
ooh,
I feel like
100th episode,
100th
multiple hot
episode.
takes and a joke.
I feel like in some of these cases Jesus had to have had a sense of humor.
Yeah,
Just like some of this imagery, right? And maybe at the time they didn't or whatever, I don't know. But like some of this imagery that you think of, you're like this big blob of, dough in your house that this person's, you know what I mean? Like there's got to be some chuckles in the audience. At least if I was there, I'd be chuckling. Maybe he'd be like, "Bro, that wasn't meant to be funny."
We're joking. This is real.
So I do find it go back to one of your previous statements, which was Jesus's ability or trying to describe something that's indescribable in human terms, right? And I think I have a hard time with that. Because I get that it's something, the kingdom of God is something that we just cannot comprehend in any way, shape, or form. We're not on the same level of understanding. And that bugs me.
Yeah, it's like similes and metaphors, right? Like and as, it's the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an exact 1-to-1 ratio representation.
Yeah.
It works out pretty good. It gets you a decent idea. But it's not 100%.
Yeah, it's like I think about it in life too. That frustrates me, like a runner's high. You ever got a runner's high?
No, I tried to go. I made a half mile. My knees started
Yeah.
hurting.
I don't like to run, and so
Yeah.
I've never at a point where my
And all
body's
my
telling me
running
to stop.
all my
I
running,
stop.
all my running friends are like, "Well, you got to push
push through
through
it."
to that, you past that first mile."
Yeah, not me.
I'm like, "No,
No. I'd like to breathe. I'd like my knees to not hurt, my back to not hurt. But it's exactly like that where I've never experienced it. There's people that do experience it that then can talk to each other in this like hidden language that
Ooh,
you
yeah.
don't understand, but they're trying to get you to understand what it's like, and you're like, I have no concept of what this thing is, and I just imagine it. People talking about a runner's high frustrates me, just like this, which is that it's just something that I haven't experienced.
It's like faithfulness. You have to push through enough faithfulness to see and experience the rewards of being faithful to God. And until you've had enough experiences and lowered your expectations and increased your commitment to a point of seeing the goodness and grandness that faithfulness is and the majesty of God, then you get frustrated by others talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, I was going on a slightly different path by it, but I guess that does make sense. I do think that we can see in this world glimpses of, talk about heaven or the kingdom of God, right? Like I think we see that glimpse. We see these, we just get these touches and feels of it, and we never like fully get to see it, right? And yeah, man, I can see how that would be super frustrating for someone newer to the faith. I'm just hypothetically, I'm not even talking about anybody that I know, where they're trying, they're praying, they're reading the Bible, they're coming to church, and then they get laid off from their job, right? Or there's a family illness that um, impacts their family life. Maybe a parent has a bad surgery or something. They gotta help them through it, or you know what I mean, like. And I can see how frustrating that could be in terms of like, I'm trying, I'm doing all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this happening to me? I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And because that beginning, and there's nothing wrong as a beginning Christian to be thinking that way, right? But I think that we have a tendency to use some vernacular sometimes that could be offensive to them in terms of like, well, a mature Christian would do that, would think about that, right? And every time I hear that, it makes me just
I
cringe.
just hope to meet one someday.
Yeah, I think there are plenty of quote unquote mature Christians or Christians that are deeper in their faith than the normal. And I can think of a few, but I will not name their name. They're like Voldemort.
Ooh.
But you can think of like, how about Mother Teresa, right? Like, I mean, just somebody that's really deep within their faith. You could basically
Yeah, all
call
my
mature.
breakfast Bible study kids were supposed to come back to McDonald's on Wednesday
Oh yeah,
for the breakfast Bible study, and they were supposed to come back with their with that person that they've learned wisdom through.
not with the person.
No,
But just with the idea of who the
with
person
who that
I was
person
gonna say,
is, and they're
trying to get all these other people in
they're
there.
supposed to write. We're working through Proverbs, and they were supposed to write this out. Anyway, spoiler alert: there's no school Wednesday, so we don't have breakfast Bible study. They were going to earn chocolate chip cookies.
Oh man, for breakfast?
Yeah,
Love it.
well, gotta reward them somehow.
I know.
So anyway,
Sugar them up, send them to school.
that was but there's no.
So are you
breakfast
doing
Bible
it the following Monday? Because it's
Wednesday?
technically,
Yeah,
or Wednesday.
I
yeah.
will, yeah.
Because it's technically the first
I
Wednesday.
will. But since none of them probably listen to the podcast, whenever they come in with it, I'll be like, no, I talked about this on the podcast. Should have listened.
You guys should have listened. Yeah, so I think there's definitely some people that are quote unquote mature Christians or mature in their faith, right? But yeah, man, that's so frustrating. And I think that people that have been doing this a lot, right? People that have their whole life they've gone to church and done all the things can sometimes fall into that trap too of like, I mean, why me? So yeah, that would be frustrating. To be trying to be active, but not see what everybody else is seeing around you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I had an opportunity to speak yesterday, and I was talking about my guy Gideon.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna love that guy, but he had that experience where he's like in a hole in the ground, hiding his crummy, chaff-filled wheat from the Midianites, just like hoarding it down in a hole.
yeah,
and thinking like, this is it. This is what God's chosen people gets us. Is this?
Yeah,
hiding, cowering, in survival mode, without even credit hours of survival under his belt, right?
Yeah.
Like didn't even have a UMKC survival class. He's just threshing wheat in a wine press, which would probably been a 101 level survival class. Like, don't do that, man.
Yeah.
But the angel of the Lord comes and calls him out as a mighty warrior to go live the life he was sent to go live and to lead and be a representative, to be a judge, to be a leader, to live into a very direct calling,
Yeah.
Am I not sending you? The angel of the Lord says, go. And you can.
But that can be frustrating for people
I
too,
know.
right? Like that whole thought process is like, well, where's my angel telling me to go live out what God has intended for me? I just got to sit here and listen, and I'm not hearing anything, right? Like, I mean, some of that can kind of be frustrating for people,
course.
I think. And so you take what you're supposed to take from the message is that even when you don't feel that you have any worth, right? And you're in your own doubt and misery and whatever, you can still live into what God wants you
He was the
to
smallest
be,
member
needs you
from
to
the
be.
weakest family
Right.
in the organization. So when you're feeling like this is it,
Right.
like
But there's that flip side too, which is, where's my angel? So anyways, I just want to encourage people. I'm going to tie this back into our 100th episode. So we've said it a couple times. This is our 100th episode of this podcast, which is great. And it's growing weekly, monthly, maybe. Every week we've been doing this for almost 2 years, right? Probably a little bit more because we've done some breaks in there. And the faithfulness to do something and get a few viewers, and then it grow and grow and grow. But it's still not like there's not a million people out there, watching it, right? So that some of that faithfulness of even this, just doing this weekly or whatever, is important.
I hope so. I find it important. I find it important for my own external processing of theological concepts, and hopefully those listening along can find some little nuggets in there that help them process it as well.
Yeah. So if anybody's watching this podcast and you've made it this far, congratulations. You should totally subscribe, leave a comment, and if you want to, some of our long-term listeners, we have a lot of long-term listeners. You can leave a comment about what was maybe your favorite episode that you've ever listened to or watched, or maybe drop us an email if you prefer to be less public about it, just layman's terms at kearneyfumc.org. Maybe I'll put that like under the video or something on the screen. But just shoot us an email or leave a comment about your favorite episode or your favorite moment in this past 100 episodes, and we'd appreciate it.
All right.
See you later.
Bye, guys.